Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to my channel. Picture this: you're at the end of a long day, the kind that leaves your shoulders humming with tension and your thoughts scattered like dandelion seeds in the wind. You pour yourself one last coffee, scroll your phone out of habit, and stumble across a text from a woman you adore. Maybe it's your wife, your girlfriend, the one you're quietly courting. It reads, "I can't stop thinking about the way you looked at me tonight." Your chest caves in a little. You want to reply, but the words hang just out of reach, as if they're waiting for permission to be bold. You type, delete, type again. Finally you write, "You looked beautiful," and instantly regret how ordinary it feels, how pale compared to the storm she just stirred in you. Now imagine instead that you knew 3 forbidden compliments. Phrases society says you're not supposed to utter, yet when whispered at the right moment, they bypass her rational mind and land straight in the marrow of her longing. Imagine the way her pupils dilate, the soft catch of breath, the almost imperceptible lean of her body toward yours. What if the difference between beautiful and irresistible wasn't the woman in front of you, but the courage to say the unsayable? Tonight we're going to explore those exact words, the ones that make a woman feel seen in a way she rarely admits she wants, the ones that make her forget the rules she's spent a lifetime memorizing. Stay with me, because once you taste this kind of fluency, you'll never again settle for polite. I want to start by asking you something that might feel a little dangerous. When was the last time you told a woman that what you desire most about her isn't her body, but the way her mind moves when she forgets to perform? Not when she's polished or agreeable, but in those tiny, unguarded moments when her thoughts spill sideways and you can almost see the sparks behind her eyes. Most men are taught to compliment the visible, the dress, the curve, the smile. And yes, those are lovely, but they are also safe. They keep the conversation on the surface where risk is minimal and rejection is manageable. Tonight we're going to practice something else. The first forbidden compliment is this: "I crave the way you think when your mind is unguarded." Say it slowly, as if the syllables themselves are a silk scarf you're trailing across her forearm. Notice the verb, not like, not appreciate. Crave implies hunger, a visceral pull that bypasses logic. And then notice the object of that hunger, not her lips, not her legs, but the private architecture of her thoughts. Let me paint a picture so you can feel how it lands. You're in the kitchen. It's late. The dishes are half finished. She's leaning against the counter, swirling the wine she swore was her last glass, and she starts talking about a dream she had where she was driving a car with no brakes through a city she's never visited. Rather than nodding politely, you step closer, lower your voice, and say, "I crave the way you think when your mind is unguarded." Watch what happens. Her shoulders drop a fraction. She stops scanning your face for judgment. The story she was about to dismiss as silly suddenly feels worth telling, because you just gave her permission to be complex in front of you. Now, why is this compliment forbidden? Because it breaks the unspoken rule that men should keep the conversation light, that depth is the territory of midnight phone calls with girlfriends, not the man who shares her toothpaste. But depth is also where Eros lives. When you invite her mind to undress in front of you, you're issuing an invitation to intimacy that no push-up bra can rival. But here's the nuance: timing and tone matter more than the words themselves. If you launch this line while checking your watch, it will feel like a pickup line from a self-help seminar. Instead, wait for the moment her eyelids soften and her voice loses its rehearsed cadence. Match your cadence to hers, slow, deliberate, as if the world has politely dimmed its light so the two of you can speak in whispers. And then comes the micro-calibration. After you speak, stay silent. Let the compliment hover in the air like incense. She may blush, she may laugh, she may test you. "What do you mean? Unguarded?" But underneath every reaction is the same tremor: "He sees me." Resist the urge to explain. If you start clarifying, you shift the focus back to you. Instead, mirror her reaction, a soft smile, steady eye contact, a gentle nod that says, "Yes, exactly that part of you I just named." You might be wondering, Esther, what if she deflects? Beautiful. Deflection is often a signal that the compliment found its mark. She might toss her hair and say, "Oh, I ramble when I'm tired." Don't rescue her from the discomfort. Simply reply, "Ramble again for me." Then, "I like the taste of your unfinished sentences." Now you've doubled down. Not only do you crave her unguarded mind, you're asking for seconds. The key is to keep your voice low enough that she has to lean in, creating a pocket of privacy even if you're in a crowded room. Let's anchor this in your daily life. Think of the next conversation you'll have with her, maybe on the couch tonight, maybe in the morning over coffee. Identify one moment when her expression drifts, when she's half lost in thought. Instead of asking, "What are you thinking?" which often snaps her back to the surface, say, "Keep going. I'm listening to the color behind your words." Then pause. Let her decide whether to reveal more. If she does, offer the compliment. If she doesn't, you've still signaled that her interior world is welcome in your presence. Remember, this is not about flattery. Flattery wants something back. This is about recognition, the rare kind that doesn't rush to reassure. When you tell her you crave the way her mind moves in its raw state, you're telling her that her contradictions, sharp and soft, fierce and frightened, are not liabilities but landscapes you want to explore barefoot. And that, my friend, is where longing begins. Stay with me, breathe slowly, because what we're about to step into is even more intimate than her thoughts. It is the terrain of the body, of molecules and memory, of the silent language skin speaks when words have already surrendered. The second forbidden compliment is this: your scent undoes the architecture of every room I walk into. Notice how it refuses to stay polite. It doesn't say, you smell nice. Nice belongs in elevators and duty-free shops. This sentence admits that a fragrance dismantles walls, shifts gravity, rewrites the blueprint of whatever space you share. And it does so without ever naming perfume. Let me tell you a story. A man I'll call Daniel once confessed that every time his wife returned from evening runs, he stood at the threshold of their apartment and waited for the precise moment the hallway air changed. It wasn't sweat, he said. It was heat meeting skin, cotton meeting pulse, the faint trace of citrus from her shampoo colliding with something wilder, something only running could coax out of her. One night, instead of the habitual, good workout, he stepped close enough that her breath clouded his glasses and whispered, your scent undoes the architecture of every room I walk into. She laughed, but it was the kind of laugh that catches on the exhale and turns into a soft moan. The hallway light hummed above them like a witness. She didn't move away. He told me later that she reached up, touched the hollow beneath his ear, and said, I didn't know you noticed. That was the beginning of 3 consecutive nights in which dishes went unwashed, phones stayed unanswered, and the couch became a geography lesson neither of them had studied in college. Why is this compliment forbidden? Because it announces that you are porous to her, that your nervous system has logged her chemistry like a favored melody. In a culture that trains men to appear self-contained, admitting that a woman's scent can rearrange your inner scaffolding feels like handing her the remote control to your composure. It's vulnerable, it's also irresistible. But again, execution is everything. First, anchor it in specificity. Maybe it's the way her neck smells at 11 p.m. when the day's lotion has faded and what's left is just her. Maybe it's the smoky trace of cardamom on her wrists after she's chopped dinner, or the salt at her collarbone when she's been laughing too hard. The compliment gains its charge when she senses you've catalogued her quietly, without agenda. It tells her you've been paying attention on a cellular level. Second, deliver it as confession, not observation. Drop your shoulders, soften your jaw, let your voice fall into the register you reserve for 3M secrets. Imagine you're telling a priest, not a camera crew. If you say it while scrolling your phone, you'll flatten the voltage. If you say it while looking at the curve where her shoulder meets her arm, you'll amplify it tenfold. Third, leave room for aftermath. After the sentence leaves your mouth, the air will feel heavier, like a thunderstorm has been scheduled but hasn't yet announced itself. Let that heaviness breathe. She might arch an eyebrow. She might bury her face in your chest. She might simply inhale and exhale, slow, deliberate, before asking, which room do you mean? Whatever she chooses, meet her there. If she leans in, close the final inch. If she teases, tease back. Start running again tomorrow. I'll demolish the hallway by Friday. The key is to keep the tone reverent, as if her scent is a cathedral you don't want to desecrate with haste. Let's practice the calibration. Tonight, when she walks past you, maybe fresh from the shower, maybe still carrying the day, pause whatever you're doing. Let 2 full heartbeats pass. Then, as she bends to pick up a glass or reach for a book, step just close enough that the space between you feels magnetized. Lower your chin so your words land near the shell of her ear. Say it. Then step back half a pace, not out of fear, but to give her room to feel the echo. Watch her pupils. If they widen, you've scored. If she smiles softly and keeps moving, trust that the compliment is working underground. It will resurface later, in the dark, when she decides to press her wrist to your lips and ask you to tell her again. And here's the subtle twist. The compliment works even when she's not physically present. Daniel told me that 2 weeks after he first spoke those words, he was traveling for work. He texted her from his hotel room. I just walked into the lobby and for a split second your scent rearranged the marble. She replied with a single emoji: peach, flame, ghost. But that night she called him wearing the same running top she'd worn the evening he'd spoken. She held it to the camera and said, architecture report. He laughed, but his voice cracked. Distance collapsed. They stayed on the call until the sun barged through her curtains. Your scent undoes the architecture of every room I walk into. Practice it in your head until it feels like prayer, because the third forbidden compliment is going to ask you to go even deeper, past mind and body, into the forbidden territory of her unspoken yearnings, the ones she doesn't list on dating profiles or whisper to her best friend over brunch. And you'll need the steadiness you just cultivated to carry it off without flinching. Lean in, darling, because we're no longer hovering at the doorway of her mind or lingering in the hollow of her throat. We're stepping across the threshold into the sanctuary where longing and terror share the same breath. The third forbidden compliment is the most perilous, the one that can level every carefully assembled defense. You scare me in the exact shape of everything I've ever prayed for. Say it, only when you can feel your own pulse jump against your collarbone, because if it doesn't cost you something to speak it, you're saying it too soon. Let me unfold why these words unsettle and magnetize at once. They admit that her presence has cracked open the part of you that thought desire was a manageable inconvenience. They confess that what you want is not merely a pleasant addition to your life, but a reordering of its foundations, and they do so without asking her to dilute herself so you can stay comfortable. I once worked with a man named Javier who had spent 15 years building a consulting firm, a gym routine, and a retirement spreadsheet that glowed with the smug satisfaction of compound interest. Then he met Lena, an architect who sketched blueprints on napkins and spoke about negative space as if it were a living creature. On their fourth date, she took him to an abandoned warehouse she was transforming into a community library. It was dusk, the air thick with sawdust and jasmine from vines forcing their way through broken windows. She stood on a makeshift scaffold, hair tied up with a pencil, explaining how light would one day pour through a slit she'd carved in the roof. Javier told me later that his chest felt like it was being unscrewed from the inside. Instead of retreating, he climbed the scaffold, steadied his voice, and said, "You scare me in the exact shape of everything I've ever prayed for." The pencil fell from her hair. Neither of them bent to pick it up. Notice the architecture of the sentence. It pairs fear and prayer, two forces we're taught to separate. Fear belongs to childhood nightmares, prayer belongs to hushed Sunday mornings. By welding them together, you're telling her that her magnitude has dismantled your small, tidy altar of control. You're not worshipping her, you're admitting that her existence has realigned your compass. That is intoxicating to a woman who has spent years shrinking so men can feel large. But the compliment only works if the fear you name is specific. Generic fear feels manipulative. Javier didn't say, "You scare me, full stop." He said, "On the exact shape of everything I've ever prayed for." The phrase, exact shape, tells her you've examined the contours of your longing and discovered they match her silhouette. It's forensic. It's devotional. Deliver it in the moment when she reveals something that momentarily destabilizes you. Maybe it's the way she refuses to apologize for wanting more. Maybe it's the way she mothers her ambition without softening its edges. Maybe it's how she cries at documentaries about whales, but can dismantle a carburetor with the precision of a watchmaker. Whatever it is, let the realization hit you in real time. Let her see the flicker of awe cross your face. Then speak the sentence as if it's been pulled out of you by centrifugal force. No preamble, no hedging, just the raw fact. After you speak, do not fill the silence with explanations. The silence is part of the compliment. It is the acoustic shape of reverence. She may look away, overwhelmed. She may whisper, "I don't know what to say." That's good. You've created a pause in which she can feel the weight of being truly witnessed. If she tests you, "Why would I scare you?" Answer from the body, not the script. Place her hand on your sternum so she can feel the gallop. Say, "Because I thought I'd built a life big enough and you keep proving I was living in a dollhouse." Then stop. Let the metaphor do its work. A word of caution: this compliment is not a proposal. It is not a promise. It is simply the honest report of an internal earthquake. If you attach expectations to it, if you follow it with, "So please don't hurt me," or "So what are we doing?" you'll evacuate its power. The gift is the vulnerability itself, offered without a price tag. Practice noticing the moments when she scares you in the shape of your secret yes. Write them down if you must. Today she spoke 3 languages in the same sentence, and I felt my borders blur. Today she told the waiter the wine was corked without flinching, and I remembered I've spent years swallowing sour things. Keep the list private. Let it season. Then when the moment is right, hand her the distilled sentence like a match struck in a dark cathedral. And now we have walked through all 3 forbidden compliments. Each one peels back a deeper layer: her unguarded mind, her scent that rewrites geography, the terrifying holiness of everything she embodies. Hold them gently, they are live wires. When you speak them, you are not seducing a woman. You are inviting her into a conspiracy of truth. And conspiracies of truth are what turn lovers into legends. I want you to stay with me in the hush we just created, because a compliment is only as wild as the body that delivers it. You can memorize the sentences, you can rehearse them in the shower until they sound like song lyrics, but if your shoulders are high with performance, if your breath is shallow with fear of getting it wrong, the words will land like a sales pitch. So tonight we are going to practice the choreography that makes these 3 forbidden phrases feel inevitable rather than staged. Begin with the exhale. Most men enter a charged moment holding their breath as if oxygen might give them away. Try this next time you see her across a room. Maybe she's bending to pet the dog. Maybe she's laughing with her whole spine. Let your next breath out slowly through parted teeth, as if you're fogging a mirror you intend to write her name on. Feel your ribcage settle. Feel the tiny slackening at the base of your belly. That slackening is the first sign you're shifting from hunter to host, from someone who wants to impress to someone who has space to witness. Now the stance. Stand or sit so that your hips are level and your weight drops into the arches of your feet or the bones of your pelvis. Imagine a silk thread from the crown of your head to the ceiling, just enough lift to keep you alert, but not so much that you hover above your own skin. Let your hands be visible, relaxed, palms occasionally open toward her. Closed fists or pockets signal self-protection, open palms signal, I can hold whatever you choose to give. Then the gaze. There is a look that lingers half a second longer than polite, a look that does not dart away when she meets it. Practice tonight in the mirror. Soften the muscles around your eyes, as if you're watching a child sleep. Let your peripheral vision widen, so that you see her whole body at once, the arch of her foot tucked under her thigh, the pulse at her throat, without scanning like a security camera. When the moment arrives, this gaze will deliver the compliment before your mouth does. Voice placement comes next. Most men speak compliments from the throat, which keeps them light and socially acceptable. Instead, let the words originate lower at the sternum, so they vibrate the place where your ribs part. You'll feel it when you say her name. Try it now, say her name as if you're tasting a spoonful of warm honey. Notice how it slows you down. That honey tempo is the tempo of the 3 forbidden phrases. If you rush, you'll sound like you're reading a cue card. If you savor, you sound like the cue card was written by her own heartbeat. Touch when it's invited is the final layer. I'm not speaking of grand gestures, no sweeping her into your arms like a movie poster. I'm talking about micro touches that anchor the compliment in physical reality. After you tell her, I crave the way you think when your mind is unguarded, let the pad of your thumb brush the side of her index finger, barely a comma of contact, then retreat. After you say, your scent undoes the architecture of every room I walk into, lean in so the shell of your ear almost grazes her temple, inhale audibly, then exhale a soft hum that vibrates against her hairline. After you confess, you scare me in the exact shape of everything I've ever prayed for. Place her palm flat over your heart and cover it with your own hand for 3 steady beats. Then release. The release is as eloquent as the touch. It tells her the moment belongs to her interpretation now. Practice these 4 layers, exhale, stance, gaze, voice, touch, until they feel like slipping into a familiar coat rather than donning armor. You can rehearse them in mundane places, while ordering coffee, while listening to a colleague, while walking your dog. The goal is to embody a quiet conductivity so that when the room tilts and the moment chooses you, you don't scramble for lines. The lines simply pass through the opening you've already created in your own body. And here's the subtle magic. The more you inhabit these layers, the less you'll need my exact phrasing. You'll find your own sentences rising from the same well. Sentences that taste of her, of you, of the charged space between. Because what women hunger for is not a script, but a man who has done the interior work to hold intensity without flinching. When you become that man, every compliment you utter becomes forbidden in the best way. It feels like a secret the world hasn't earned yet. Let that settle under your skin. Tomorrow night, we will weave these 3 phrases into a single evening, an arc from hello to the hush afterward, so you can feel how they braid together into one seamless conversation that leaves her both steadier and more undone than she was before. So let us live it, minute by minute, the way a candle leaves its wax, quietly, completely, until there's nothing left to hide. Picture a Thursday that has already been long meetings that dragged, traffic that hissed, a sky the color of unpolished steel. You text her at 4:30, oh, I'm cooking. Bring only your hunger. She replies with a single emoji, chopsticks, whiny glass. Moon, which you read as yes and hurry. By 6, the table is small and square, 2 plates, no centerpiece, because tonight the centerpiece will be whatever arises when you stop filling the silence with safe topics. She arrives smelling faintly of rain and printer ink. You take her coat but do not rush to the kitchen. Instead, you stand in the doorway, exhale the day away, and let your eyes soften until you see the faint violet fatigue beneath her lashes. You do not say, you look tired. You say, I crave the way you think when your mind is unguarded. No preamble, no weather report. The sentence slips out low, almost conversational, as if the two of you have been mid-conversation for years. She blinks, half smiles, and something behind her pupils loosens. She slips off her shoes without looking down, pads barefoot to the counter, starts tearing basil leaves without being asked. The compliment has already begun its work. Dinner is simple pasta, lemon, chili, too much butter. You move around each other the way long-time dancers adjust to new music, hips brushing, shoulders trading places, a choreography of not hurrying. While the sauce reduces, she tells you about a new client who insists on glass walls even though the building faces west and the city heat is merciless. You listen with your entire torso angled toward her, palms open on the cutting board. When she pauses, you step closer, breathe in the citrus on her wrists and whisper, your scent undoes the architecture of every room I walk into. The spoon in her hand stills. Steam rises between you like a witness. She doesn't reply. Instead, she dips her forefinger into the sauce, offers it to you. You taste, nod, but the nod is more about the gesture than the flavor. The second compliment has become atmosphere. You eat slowly, forks clinking, candle guttering. She talks about childhood summer spent in a village where the only library was a retired school bus parked under a jacaranda tree. You notice the way her voice grows both smaller and larger when she mentions the librarian who let her check out 10 books at a time. The room has gone quiet except for her story and the rain brushing the windows. You wait until she reaches for her water glass, then cover her free hand with yours, not squeezing, simply aligning the lifelines. You say, "You scare me in the exact shape of everything I've ever prayed for." Your voice cracks on, scare, not from anxiety but from the way the word scrapes the roof of truth. She sets the glass down unfinished. The candle flickers as if someone has opened a door that isn't there. What happens next is not scripted. Maybe she stands, circles behind you, places her cheek between your shoulder blades and inhales. Maybe she stays seated, eyes shining, and says, "Keep talking." Maybe both of you simply breathe for 7 long counts. Whatever the outward motion, the inward motion is the same. The compliments have braided into a single filament of trust, and the filament is now pulling the two of you closer than touch. You find yourselves on the couch, knees touching, rain loud enough to erase clocks. She traces the seam of your shirt cuff and asks, "What do we do with all this noticing?" You answer by kissing the inside of her wrist where basil and lemon still linger. No further words are necessary. The compliments have become verbs. Much later, when the candle has drowned in its own wax and the rain has softened to a lullaby hiss, she falls asleep against your chest. You lie awake, feeling the gentle thunder of her heartbeat through the thin cotton of her t-shirt. Somewhere between her third sigh and the first pale suggestion of dawn, you realize the 3 sentences have not simply flattered her. They have rewritten the contract of the evening, perhaps of the months to come. You did not perform desire, you disclosed it. You did not chase her mystery, you stood still long enough for the mystery to choose you. And that, my friend, is how the forbidden becomes the foundation. Not by strategy, not by script, but by the quiet bravery of letting your body speak what your heart has always known, that to be truly seen is the rarest aphrodisiac, and to be the man who sees is the rarest art. Here's to living that art. Tonight and every ordinary Thursday that suddenly remembers it is sacred.